Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
We're digging into something really quite powerful today. A bit unsettling, actually.
Yeah, definitely. It's a piece of analysis that really makes you stop and think.
It's from a researcher named Temin, and it presents this striking idea about the American economy. Or maybe I should say two American economies.
That's exactly it. The source lays out this concept of a dual economy. It actually echoes an older model, the Lewis model, but applies it to the U.S. today.
Yeah.
And the core idea is that the middle class hasn't just shrunk, it's sort of fractured, leaving this big split.
A split between who, exactly?
Well, between two distinct groups living very different economic lives. And our mission today is really to unpack what that means, for different people and maybe what could be done about it.
Okay, let's unpack this then, this dual economy.
Yeah.
What are the two sides?
So Temin's analysis talks about, on one hand, the FTE sector.
FTE, like full-time equivalent.
Yeah, but here it's used a bit differently. It basically means the professional, managerial, higher-skilled folks, the more affluent part of society.
The ones with, generally speaking, more economic and maybe political power?
Exactly. And the argument is this group tends to make political choices that mostly benefit themselves.
Okay, that's one side. What's the other?
The other side is the low-wage sector. And here's the kicker, the really startling part.
Yeah.
This isn't some small group on the margins. The research suggests it includes something like 80% of Americans.
80. Wow. Okay, that's huge. So a small FTE sector and then this massive low-wage sector.
Precisely. It reframes how you might think about the economy, doesn't it? Not one continuum, but two quite separate zones.
It really does. And what are the dynamics between these two zones? According to the analysis, it sounds like there'd be tension.
Oh, absolutely. The analysis suggests it's quite intentional. The capitalists within that FTE sector, as the text puts it, have an interest in keeping wages low in the other sector.
Why? I mean, what's the logic there?
Well, simply put, to ensure there's always plenty of cheap labor available for businesses.
Ah. So it's not just something that happens, it's part of the structure, a built-in imbalance.
That's the argument, yeah. A fundamental structural tension driven by these differing interests.
Okay, so beyond just wages, what else keeps this divide going? Does the analysis talk about specific policies?
It does, and this is where it gets quite stark. The text points to what it calls oppressive policies, specifically designed to keep the low-wage sector. Well, the term used is quiet.
Quiet. What kind of policies are we talking about?
Things like mass incarceration on a huge scale, systemic housing segregation,
Yeah.
and various forms of disenfranchisement, making it harder for people in this sector to have a political voice.
So these aren't just economic side effects, they're presented as active measures.
Yes, deliberate policy choices reinforcing the divide.
And Temin brings in this term racecraft, which I found really arresting. Can you explain that?
Yeah. It's a powerful concept. Racecraft, as presented here, isn't just about acknowledging race exists. It's about the belief in race being actively used to justify discrimination and these very policies we just mentioned.
How does that work in practice, though?
Well, here's what's really fascinating and frankly disturbing. African Americans are about, 15% of the U.S. population?
Definitely, yeah.
But the policies aimed at controlling or managing the low-wage sector are often rationalized by framing the entire sector as if it's primarily black.
Even though, wait, you said 80% of Americans are in the low-wage sector? That can't be mostly black Americans.
Exactly. The majority of people in the low-wage sector are actually white.
Wow.
And the text notes that Latino immigrants have increasingly become part of the sector too, so the white portion is now a slim majority, but still a majority.
So why the disconnect? Why is race, specifically the black experience, used to justify policies affecting a much broader majority white group?
That's the million-dollar question the analysis raises, isn't it? It suggests either a deliberate manipulation of narrative or maybe a deep-seated historical bias being exploited to maintain the status quo for the entire low-wage sector. It makes you really question the stories we tell about poverty and who it affects.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're caught in this low-wage sector, facing these pressures, how do you get out? What's the escape hatch?
The traditional answer, and the one the analysis points to, is education. That's supposed to be the ladder into the FTE sector.
Supposed to be.
Yeah.
I sense a but coming.
Yeah, a big
Yeah.
but. The path is becoming much, much harder. The text talks about a loss of social capital, things like networks, support systems, mentors within the low-wage sector.
Okay.
And that loss makes it incredibly difficult for people to stick with education long enough to actually make that jump successfully. It's not just about affording college. It's about navigating the whole system without that support structure.
So it's not just about individual grit. There are these wider systemic things making it harder.
Precisely. And the analysis links this directly to broader policy failures. It argues that choices made by the FTE sector have effectively crippled the American educational system.
Crippled it. How so?
Well, often when we talk about failing schools, the focus is on, say, segregated schools in Black communities, and that's a huge issue.
Right.
But the source argues the damage is much wider. It hits white and Latino kids in the low-wage sector just as hard. The disinvestment, the lack of resources, it's widespread.
So the dream of education as the great equalizer is fading.
It seems that way. If you connect the dots, the analysis shows social mobility going down as inequality has gone up. That ladder is just much steeper and harder to climb now for almost everyone starting near the bottom.
And the human impact. The text highlights something really concerning about low-wage whites.
Yes, it notes they were almost invisible in public policy for a long time, until around 2016. And the description used is stark. Dying in their lives of quiet despair.
Quiet despair, that's chilling. Are there numbers behind that?
Tragically, yes. The research points to a shocking rise in mortality rates for less educated, middle-aged white men.
From what?
From what some call deaths of despair, drug and alcohol poisoning, suicide, chronic liver diseases. And this was happening while mortality rates for other groups were actually falling.
That's profoundly sad and deeply worrying.
It really is. It shows the real physical cost of this economic divide beyond just income. It's about lives being cut short.
And this despair, this invisibility, it eventually boiled over politically, didn't it?
It seems so. The analysis observes that the 2016 election really revealed and fostered the anger simmering in the low-wage sector.
How so?
Well, the text notes, factually, that Donald Trump's campaign appealed directly to many whites in this sector, giving voice to that frustration. And interestingly, on a somewhat different track, Bernie Sanders appealed to another part of the low-wage sector, particularly younger people burdened by huge student debts from trying, and often failing, to use that education ladder.
So different appeals, but tapping into the same underlying economic precarity.
That's how the analysis frames it. It's important to stress the text isn't endorsing any candidate. It's simply observing how this long-ignored sleeping giant, the low-wage sector, started to make its anger felt politically.
Okay. So while all this is happening in the low-wage sector, the economic hardship, the deaths of despair, the political awakening, what's the FTE sector focused on, according to this analysis?
The text argues pretty bluntly that the FTE sector makes plans for itself, and it tends to ignore the needs of the 80% in the low-wage sector.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. The analysis points to policy decisions around things like healthcare access, funding for public education, the approach to mass incarceration, investment in infrastructure, or even how debt was handled after the 2008 financial crisis.
And the argument is these decisions primarily benefited the FTE sector.
That's the core assertion, that these policies were largely designed with the FTE sector's interests in mind, almost like the low-wage sector's needs weren't really part of the calculation.
Is there a reason given why this happens, beyond just self-interest?
The text offers a pretty troubling explanation for some of it. It suggests that public support for things like universal health care or better public education was deliberately eroded.
How?
By framing these programs as primarily benefiting African Americans and later Latinos, the idea being, why should we pay for their benefits?
Even though, as we discussed, the low-wage sector is majority white and these programs would benefit them too.
Exactly. It's using that racecraft idea again to undermine broad-based support. The analysis also points to the failure to invest in infrastructure or reluctance to address mortgage debt after 2008 as examples of the FTE sector being unwilling, as the text says, to spend its members' money on things that do not benefit them directly.
And does the very top, the wealthiest, play a special role here?
Yes, the analysis highlights the disproportionate effect of the top 1% on economic policy. Their priorities, often focused on resisting tax increases and cutting government spending, heavily influence the overall direction, making it harder to fund those broader public goods.
It feels like we're hearing echoes of history here. The text mentions David Otter comparing the low-wage sector to the Luddites.
Yeah, the workers who resisted machines in the Industrial Revolution. It's a provocative comparison.
It reminds us that back then, after the really tough times in Britain, like the Hungry 20s, it took maybe half a century for wages to properly recover. That's a sobering thought.
It is a reminder that these shifts can take a very, very long time. But the text also brings in a more hopeful or at least action-oriented historical perspective.
Ooh.
It references John Dewey, the philosopher, writing back in 1935.
Okay, what did Dewey say?
What's really interesting is Dewey argued that the whole idea of liberalism needed an update. Originally, it was about individuals fighting against restraints like government overreach.
Right, classic liberalism.
But Dewey said, look, we're now in an age of potential abundance, not just scarcity. And in this new context, real freedom, effective liberty, and opportunity for personal growth requires everyone to have basic material security first.
So you can't really be free or reach your potential if you're constantly worried about survival.
Exactly. Economic security is the foundation. And this connects to what others, like Piketty, observed about the big social programs of the 20th century, providing education, health, retirement support for all.
And the emphasis there is on for all.
Critically, for all, regardless of race, gender, income. But the danger Temin's analysis highlights for America today is that this dual economy, cemented by racecraft, is freezing the system, is preventing us from achieving that for all.
So it diagnoses this deep problem, this freeze. Does it offer a way to thaw things out? Any solutions proposed?
It does. It lays out a pretty bold set of 5 actions. The text is clear. These won't be easy, especially given the current political climate, but they form a kind of roadmap.
Okay, let's hear them. What are the 5 actions?
All right, think of it like this.
Restore and really expand public education from the very beginning.
Okay.
2, shift resources away from repression, things like mass incarceration, and invest that money in people, in human and social capital.
Makes sense.
3, fix our crumbling infrastructure and also deal with the crushing mortgage and student debt holding people back.
Infrastructure and debt, okay.
4, reject this idea of public versus private as opposites. See government as a tool for everyone's benefit. The text calls this rejecting the private-public oxymoron.
Interesting phrasing. And number 5.
Number 5 is about identity and inclusion. Reject the majority-minority oxymoron and truly embrace American diversity in practice.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a list. Ambitious.
Definitely ambitious. It's
Yeah.
a call for some fundamental changes.
Let's dig into the first few a bit more. Number 1, restore and expand public education. What does that look like specifically?
The focus is really strong on the early years preschool, high-quality early education, getting families involved, and literally rebuilding schools that are falling apart.
And there's evidence this works, right? Like Head Start.
Exactly. The text points to the very high payoff of early investment. But it's not just about preschool.
Right, it has to continue.
It needs to be a continuous pipeline of support right through the system, including making public universities affordable again, tackling that side of the debt problem too.
Which connects straight into the second point, doesn't it? About shifting resources from repression. How can education work if mass incarceration is pulling people out of communities?
You've hit the nail on the head. The analysis poses that exact question. How can education be universal if mass incarceration continues? And vice versa. They are fundamentally linked.
So what does shifting resources from repression mean in practice?
It means things like actually ending mass incarceration, looking at why arrest rates are so different for different groups, making sure kids whose parents are incarcerated get educational support, helping people re-enter the workforce after prison, and really tackling housing segregation.
So education and ending repression are...
2 sides of the same coin, as the text puts it. And crucially, the point is made that these changes benefit all Americans. White, black, Latino, everyone gains from better education and less incarceration, even if the political conversation often gets narrowly focused on race.
That's a key point. Okay, recommendation 3, infrastructure and debt forgiveness. You mentioned infrastructure was something both candidates talked about in 2016.
Yes, it's one area where there's sometimes, potential for agreement, at least on the surface.
Why is it so important in this dual economy model?
2 main reasons given. First, rebuilding infrastructure creates jobs, often good jobs for workers currently in the low-wage sector. Second, it provides long-term benefits for the whole economy. It's framed as an investment, not just spending.
And the debt forgiveness part, student loans, mortgages.
The argument there is that forgiving some of this debt, particularly for those struggling in the low-wage sector, would act like a massive economic stimulus. It frees people from that oppression of debt, as the text calls it, allowing them to actually spend money, participate more fully in the economy.
I can see the logic, but politically, forgiving debt, especially owed to private banks, that sounds tough.
Oh, incredibly tough. The text fully acknowledges the political difficulty there. It's a major hurdle.
Okay, let's move to number 4. Reject the private-public oxymoron. What's the core idea here?
It's really about changing how we think about government's role. Instead of seeing government action and private business as somehow opposed, or government as just a referee, we need to see government as a potential tool to actively increase income and security for everyone.
So embracing government's potential to improve lives across the board.
Exactly. Not just for the FTE sector, but for the 80% too. And the text adds some important context here, linking it back to politics.
How so?
It argues that the government's ability to actually do things to help the economy, especially the low-wage part, got much harder after the Citizens United Supreme Court decision in 2010.
Because of money in politics.
Precisely. That decision allowed huge amounts of money into elections, giving the very wealthy, according to the analysis, a dominant place in politics. It fuels this investment theory of politics, where donors expect policy returns for their contributions, often pushing against broad public spending.
Which makes funding these kinds of universal programs much harder.
That's the connection the text makes.
Okay, finally, number 5. Reject the majority-minority oxymoron and embrace American diversity. That phrase, majority-minority oxymoron, is striking. What's it getting at?
It's pointing out the contradiction, right?
Yeah.
How can a group be both the numerical majority in a place, but still functionally treated like a minority with less power or facing discrimination? It's saying we need to get past those labels and old ways of thinking.
And instead,
The call is to genuinely embrace diversity, to really make the ideals of this second Reconstruction, the Civil Rights era, a reality.
that sounds like overcoming centuries of history. Where does the analysis suggest starting?
It acknowledges the immense challenge. Overcoming 300 years of American history is the phrase used. But it suggests a concrete first step could be Congress or the Supreme Court reversing the Shelby County v. Holder decision from 2013.
The one that weakened the Voting Rights Act.
Exactly. The argument is that restoring robust voting rights protection will be a powerful step towards full citizenship by all citizens. But it's bigger than just voting.
Right.
It's a call to genuinely integrate neighborhoods and schools, allowing talent from all communities, African American, Latino, immigrant, to flower and benefit us all, removing the barriers that hold people back based on group identity.
So looking back at this whole analysis, it's a picture of a country that's been, as the text says, digging ourselves into this hole for over 40 years, a pretty deep hole.
It is, and the political system often seems stuck, unable to address these big structural issues.
But these 5 actions, difficult as they are, offer a potential path out.
They offer a framework, yeah,
Okay.
a direction. And that first point about education, starting really early and supporting it all the way through, seems absolutely essential to bridging that divide for everyone's benefit.
So wrapping this up, what's the key takeaway for someone listening? What does this mean for you?
Well, the text concludes with a kind of pragmatic hope.
Yeah.
Even if achieving a perfectly just society feels out of reach, pursuing these goals, especially comprehensive education, makes everyone better off.
How so?
Because it fosters the creativity, the innovation, the civic participation that makes a nation stronger, more dynamic, more secure. It benefits us all. And maybe the simplest takeaway is that old saying, when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is stop digging.
Stop digging. That makes sense. And maybe one last thought to leave our listeners with, circling back to John Dewey.
Yeah.
He argued that liberalism, to be relevant, must now become radical. Radical in recognizing that tinkering isn't enough, that thoroughgoing changes are needed in our institutions.
A fundamental shift.
A fundamental shift aimed at giving all kids something closer to an equal start and really creating one society, not two. So the question for you listening might be, what institutional changes do you think are most urgent to help us stop digging and maybe start climbing out of this hole?
A big question to ponder.
Indeed. Thanks for unpacking that with me today.
My pleasure. It's crucial stuff to think about.